It's my honor to welcome you to this session. Today we've heard the policymakers, high-level session. We've heard the climate impact. We just heard also about testings and standards. So the ground has been set for us to continue into the next session. In this session, we'll be talking about the great work the Alliance has done up till now. We know that the Alliance and its partners have driven approximately about 50 million US dollars in investment and technical assistance to clean cookstoves and fuels. The Alliance also has a pilot innovation fund, and it's a grant facility that aims to provide funding and capacity development assistance to organizations, entrepreneurs, to pilot radically game-changing ideas for clean cooking sector. The Pilot Innovation Fund has just concluded an RFP last month. And as you know, this seeks to catalyze game-changing innovations that can overcome existing barriers to scaling adoption of clean cooking solutions. Then the Alliance also has a Women Empowerment Fund, which provides grants of about 75,000 US dollars to partners who are interested in innovating around gender and empowerment intervention. Today, we need to talk about how grant proceeds, and this will enable them to develop a pilot innovations that can ultimately be scaled up. The Alliance Spark Fund, as part of a strategy to strengthen supply, enhance demand in the clean cookstoves and fuel sector through innovation and tailored for entrepreneurial capacity development. Again, we'll be talking about the Alliance as it is working with the Deutsche Bank Community Development Finance Group to structure a 4 million not-for-profit revolving clean cooking working capital fund. We will be talking about how funds are translated into stoves. And of course, we'll also be talking about how stoves translate into funds. So, shortly, my panelists will be talking about what aspects concern scaling up as we move into the next phase of our activity with the Global Alliance for Clean Cookstoves. So first, I'll introduce Jennifer Pryce, Chief Executive Officer, Calvert Foundation. The floor is yours.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. We prepped in the back, and it became clear that I might be the odd duck up here, and that's always a fun place to start. And I'll explain why. It's for two reasons that we have found ourselves, Calvert Foundation, deeply in this space. Basically, Calvert Foundation is a capital intermediary. We have been at this work 20 years, and what that means is we raise capital from private US investors as little as $20, as large as $10 million. We aggregate all that capital and we put it to good work in communities. And we lend money, we lend it into communities. And we've been hard at this work 20 years, lending into microfinance institutions, into unregulated banks in the United States, into affordable housing development projects in the United States, into sustainable agriculture, cooperatives internationally. And along our journey of continuing to raise private capital from US investors, and a lot of the trends people are aware of in this room, there's a huge demand from investors to continue to invest their money in a more responsible way. And the challenge that is laid out, I believe, for some of us that are financial intermediaries is to create new social capital markets to move this money into. And that is the first way, the first intersection, the first path that has brought us closer to this sector, the clean fuel technologies. Is this, as we all know, is an emerging field, one that has some of the capital components showing up and playing a hard and strong and a needed role, but it needs more capital components, and it needs it lined up in a way that really benefits the social entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur needs equity, it needs flexible debt, he or she might need other resources too, like that the Global Alliance for Clean Cookstoves provides around resources and data milestones and data metrics that us as investors can look to and feel confident in. And so all that's happening in this space, and we 3 years ago saw a great opportunity to begin to bring our capital into this area. And then another thing happened within Calvert Foundation that got us extremely excited and almost doubled down in this space. And that is we've always had a deep passion in our work around women. And 3 years ago, we launched a fund to raise $20 million to invest in groups that were empowering women. And we found through that work that there's many ways you can go about doing that, empowering women, but investing in the financing chain, the distribution chain, the development chain of Clean Cookstoves has outsized impact. And more so, there's great data that people are collecting to really show to the world that that is the case. So here is an opportunity to bring that data, to bring those stories back to private investors, and really it become a call to action, a real entry point for investors to see how their capital can do deep social work, as well as still earn a financial return. So we're on a journey at Calvert Foundation to bring flexible patient debt into this space and into the Cookstoves space more specifically. But just my final thought is we can't do it alone. We have one tool in the toolbox, and that's flexible patient debt capital. So part of the conversation I think that we'll have up here today is that we all have a role. You're looking at a whole kind of value chain of players on the supply side. And one piece is, again, we bring this flexible debt capital, a new and growing and sustainable source of capital to grow this space. But part of it is going to need to be around partnership and how can we bring in other actors to really augment and grow perhaps the tool that we have and the tools that other people up here will share with you.
Thank you very, very much, Jennifer. And talking about building capacity, empowering women, you're touching the right chord. And I'm sure a lot of people, by the time we leave here, will be reaching for their checkbooks because you're beginning to say what your company, Calvert Foundation, has done and how we can actually scale up action. Now moving to Carlo Figà, the CEO of Sustainable Green Fuel Enterprise. Please share your experience with us.
Thank you. Yeah, Carlo Figà Talamanca. I know it's a difficult name, but yes. So I'm here representing one of the practitioners, the suppliers of clean cooking solutions. We are based in Cambodia, and we have been growing in the last 3 years. So I wanted to share a little bit of experience we have had, and especially which are the barriers that are in this field. And I would categorize them mainly in 3 types of barrier. First of all, your product has to be right, which doesn't mean has to be right for me or for us in this room. It has to be right for our customers. And here I happen to have, by chance, one of my products. Would have been much more difficult if it was a cook stove. It's a piece of charcoal. And you say, if we sell charcoal, like people already use charcoal, why wouldn't they use your charcoal? One of the barriers is also that it has a different shape. For me, it's more practical, but for my customers, or the people that see it the first time, it's a different shape. It burns differently. We would say it burns more efficiently and cleaner. They say it burns differently. And even now that we sell 50 tons of this charcoal every month, there's some people that love it, some people that use some of this and some of the traditional charcoal, some people that tried it and don't like it at all and keep using the traditional charcoal. So as you see, it's really like a cultural and reason if they're going to adopt a new product or not. And it's really based up to the customer. We can even develop the best product that we want, but could still not find acceptance. The second type of barrier is the business model, which needs to be scalable. All the clean cooking sector, I'm talking about cook stoves and fuel, everywhere in the world, it's, I would say, mostly an informal sector. It's all micro, family-based enterprises making mud stoves, cutting wood in the forests and selling it, producing charcoal on a family basis. So in Cambodia, when I say I produce charcoal, they look at me as if I was crazy. Like, what, you a white guy doing charcoal in Cambodia? What do you mean? I said, yeah, we do it in a factory. And then they are even more puzzled. And I said, what, you produce charcoal in a factory? And I said, yeah, we are a registered business, and here's my business card. And then they're convinced I'm crazy, 100%. And, but that's a challenge, because if the sector is completely informal, and then suddenly you want to make a formal business which is scalable and can attract investment from here, also some of the panelists represent capital funds and the foundations, you have to have a formal business. And if you want to scale up, you need more suppliers. And you cannot, we produce our charcoal from coconut shells, and if I want a new supplier of coconut shell, I cannot just open the Cambodian Yellow Pages and look for a coconut shell supplier. It doesn't exist. The coconut shells are found in the markets where people use the coconut shells. So we have to create our supply chain and make it formal, and we invoice all our suppliers about what we get for the raw material. And even at the distribution, we have to, the charcoal is sold sometimes in markets at the corner of a market. They set up in the morning, sell it, and then they disappear. So how do you sell it? We cannot make a partnership with Walmart and sell it on their shelves. We have to come up with ideas of distributors that make our product accessible. So the scalability is really connected to the business model. And at last is access to finance. And access to finance, if you're small, the clean cooking market is poor. The customers are poor. The players that are there at the moment, who makes mud stoves and who makes charcoal, are poor. And they make a very small margin on what for their work, and they're happy with it. They make 2 cents of margin per kilo in Cambodia, and they're happy with it. But if you tell an investor, hey, we're going to make 5% margin, and we're going to make $50 per month of profit, they're going to not invest in your thing. So what is the key to attract investment? You have to scale, because the clean cooking market is gigantic. And so scale makes it interesting for the investors. And how we overcame these barriers, the product, we were lucky we did a good product. We did it with the help of, it was developed by an NGO in Cambodia, Jerez, which made a very good product. The business model, we tried to prove that it was scalable, and we did it with a pilot innovation fund. We received the pilot innovation fund from the Global Alliance last year, and we showed that we were producing 20 ton at that time, and after the pilot innovation fund, we were producing 40 ton and selling 40 ton. So we showed that, look, we scaled it up. And so this year, we were grantees of the Spark Fund, a bigger fund, where we are even more than doubling. By next year, we will be producing and hopefully selling 100 tons per month. So it's really big. And this will enable us to reach a scale which will make us interesting for private investors to say, wow, this is a company that actually can be even farther scaled and has the size to receive an investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'll call your name, Carlo Figà Talamanca. You represent the hard work that goes into these Cookstoves business. You say it the way it is. The sweat and tears in the field on those 2 cents, those 5 cents that you bring home to your family and say that you're in a cook stove business. Right now, I think by next year, you will be very, very proud to bring out your card and introduce yourself to all those people that doubted in the first place that you're in the right business. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, going forward to Tokunboh Ishmael, the president, Alitheia Capital, can you give us some examples of investments you've worked on the Clean Cookstoves?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Before I go into particular investments, I'll just give a brief on what Alitheia does. We're an investment firm dealing with the issues of financial inclusion and energy inclusion. And a few years back, about 5 years, we had been investing in microfinance banks, and we had also seen some of the issues on the ground with some of the clients of the microfinance banks that we were working with, particularly around clean cooking fuels and health issues that come out of using dirty fuels. And so we wanted to find a way of using the dynamics of microfinance to look at solutions on the supply side so that we could empower clients to use clean cooking fuels. Now, from the onset, what we felt was that we needed to be looking at initiatives that were scalable, because we're a financing firm. We have social missions, but we also have to make a good financial return. So from the onset, we knew that scalability had to be part of what we were doing. So in looking at a solution, we realized that we actually had to create a solution because there wasn't something out there. So we knew that we could bring the financing to the table, we could convene financing, but we wanted to know, how can we partner with a large corporation that had a distribution network? And so we partnered with the largest indigenous energy company in Nigeria, which at the time had over 600 stations across the country. So we knew that, at least in terms of a hub and spoke element, they would be able to get the products to the field, and then we'll be looking at the last mile element of getting the product out there on the supply side. So we approached this corporate and we said, your product, you're selling it majorly to the affluent. They had a large cylinder product that they were selling to affluent households. And we felt that there was a large chunk of the masses, because they were only targeting about 2% of the population. We felt there was a large chunk of the masses that they were not tapping, and that could benefit, from our perspective, from the health issues. But then we also had to sell it to them as a private company in terms of developing their markets and therefore extending the reach of their product. And that's how we sold it to them, because after all, they're a private company and they're motivated by profits. And so we had to help them think about how they were extending those profits. So looking back now, a few years later, what I'd like to touch upon is sort of for 3 constituents where we've learned some things, where we've seen the challenges, and where there's room for further opportunity and for the next phase of the Global Alliance. The first area is actually to do with the corporate. So indeed, they're motivated by profit, and they saw how this could deepen their market. So they actually invested quite a bit in developing their distribution channel even further beyond the 600 stations. But they needed help. They needed encouragement on the financing aspect. And we heard earlier today about the fund that's being set up to encourage private sector to get involved in these clean cookstove initiatives. And I actually, from experience, know that this is very important, because you have to have somebody who can take a first loss, especially when we're looking at the social aspect of this, and the corporate is looking at the private aspect and is thinking, the time to pay back of my capital is too far. So incentives that help private companies to get over that initial hurdle are very important. Now, this company invested over $20 million in further developing their distribution channel, and also in terms of the research in figuring out what was the appropriate product that they could begin to sell. And so they looked at this in phases like, we need to first of all reach those that can afford a product, but still cannot afford what we're currently selling. So we developed a first phase where we developed a product which was gone out into the market. But the key thing, if I could go back and look, it would be to say, we need to incentivize the private sector with that research and development, that product development funding. But I also think that it's important that we do bring private sector to the table. And I hope at the next summit that we have, we'll have more private sector, large corporations on this side of the room as well, telling their story and sharing how they can be brought on board. The second group is the target market, which is the households themselves. And we have to remember that with all of this, we can be talking about different efficient cook stoves, different technologies, different energy mixes, what have you, but we're dealing with human systems. And in some cases, we're trying to change behavior. We're switching people away from a certain fuel that they've become used to for whatever reason to something else. And from the client's perspective, from the user's perspective, that there's a cost to that. And so being able to think about how we do engage the target clients in a more inclusive manner to ensure that we do get the right products out there, to ensure that it's at the right affordability level for accessibility. And that's where the second leg of the ecosystem that we put together was by bringing in the microfinance for the financing. And we have financed microfinance institutions that are now, a handful of them in the Lagos region of Nigeria, that are selling, writing loans of 2,000 loans a month. So to about 5 microfinance banks, they're writing about 2,000 loans, which each loan is representing at least one cook stove. So, you know, that's quite sizable. And now we're looking at how we can take that into the rest of the country. There needs to be financing, wholesale financing, that can make that happen. And we also have to think, for the household, we have to think beyond just cooking fuels. Because really, in some of these households, you're talking about fuels, but actually they don't have jobs. They don't even have money to pay for these cook stoves. They don't have electricity. They need the energy. They don't have refrigeration. So you talking to them about the health benefits of some fuel is not necessarily top of their agenda. So we need to address that. And that brings me to the third constituent, which is on the manufacturing side. On the manufacturing side, what we've done today is we've imported. But I actually believe, and I think it's necessary, that we begin to put financing into building local manufacturing capacity, because that will also enable the end users, the consumers, to move away from being just mere consumers and participants from a consumption perspective in clean cooking to actually also being producers. And I think that's very important, and that helps with job creation, and that helps to empower them to be able to afford this. So those are the 3 areas that, looking back on our learnings, that I'd like to see some activity during this next phase of the Global Cookstoves initiative.
Thank you very much, Tokunboh. Now moving on to Allert van den Ham, please. What type of funding and support do you offer, and the rationale for these?
Last week I had the privilege of visiting the Democratic Republic of Congo. And when late night we came back from a field visit, we got stuck in a traffic jam. And the traffic jam up to Kinshasa consisted largely of huge trucks. And these trucks were filled to the brim with charcoal. And I started to think of what would happen with these trucks and this production of charcoal if we would be able to introduce efficient stoves in the market in Kinshasa. Suppose it would save us 30% of fuel, what would happen? Or even 20 or 10%. I mean, it would have an enormous impact on deforestation, probably on the procurement of the families. So it was massive. And then the next day, I started to talk to my colleagues, and we went into the market to see what devices are available in Kinshasa. And to my surprise, there was hardly any devices for efficient stoves available in the markets. And even more surprising was that there was also no demand for them. People are just used to lay out $30, $40 a month to buy charcoal. They have never done anything else. So before we start supplying clean and efficient cookstoves, we have to start creating a demand for it. But creating a demand without creating supply is also very dangerous. If you have the supply, if you have the demand and you can't supply them with the devices, you lose your market. But supplying requires investments, it requires training, it requires linking up to financial institutions to provide credit, it requires structuring financial products. There is the regulation side, the standardization, the certification. If we want to link up to the carbon markets, there's a whole set of activities that need to be in place before we can develop a mature market. And money is needed for investment, without any doubt. But just putting money on the table for investment in productive capacity is not going to do the trick. We need other types of investment to be invested in capacity building, to be invested in training, to be invested in training of the manufacturers, of the retailers, as we heard this morning, how much difference the training of retailers would make in terms of selling their products. We need more than that. And our experience, we have been working on energy devices for some 30 years in 30 countries, is that there is not one actor who is going to do the trick. We need a combination of different parties providing different skill sets, different products. And to get those actors together, to structure a sector and not a product line, that is the most important thing to do. I think it is possible, but just putting money on the table for production is not enough. Now, what we see that there is ample funding, it's hard work to get it, there's ample funding for investment. Now, for the other side, the soft money for setting up the production systems, for developing the sector, that's scarce. And investors, private investors, have not been very forthcoming with that type of money. So then we have to turn again to the public sector, which is not a problem. But I think the real problem in getting the market going is in the soft side. Once you get it going, it will thrive. No doubt about that. The private sector will take over. And then the consumers come in as the ultimate judges, whether your product is worthwhile spending money on. And I think that is what we have to aim for. Can we get all those families, all those households, those women, can we put them on the seat of deciding what they want to have? If we are there, then I think the mission has been accomplished.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And now I move on to Paul from UNHCR. We'd like to know what the size of the humanitarian demand for clean cooking solutions are and what you have to tell us about your good work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm representing the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and many other of the humanitarian organizations, some of whom are in this room. But really, we're representing the women and children and families that are, as we speak now, crossing over from Syria into Turkey and Jordan and Lebanon, the displaced people in Central African Republic. And it's a huge, there are over 50 million displaced persons in the world right now, from refugees to internally displaced persons, to stateless people, the Rohingya in Myanmar. And here we have an issue where they are unique, it's a unique context. It's a big market that is not yet, frankly, being met. The biggest aim that we have, particularly in an emergency, is to protect the women and children, and the men, of course, but particularly the women and children who have to go often for hours at a time into the forest to get wood or to have to try to get money, sometimes in very difficult ways. So our goal is to try to have fuel, appropriate fuel, but also fuel-efficient stoves they don't need to be the high-tech. They need to be very specific, and this is one of the problems because we need to stockpile them and get them quickly. So they need to be lightweight, they need to be compact, they need to be durable, They need to be cheap, inexpensive, because we're talking huge amount of emergencies right now, and we just don't have the funds to pay for the stoves that the more high-end stoves. And most importantly, they need to be culturally appropriate. And this is often problematic because we don't have time for behavior change at the beginning of an emergency. And so as someone said to us, we would rather see 95% of families using a 20% fuel-efficient stove than 20% of the families using a 95% fuel-efficient stove. So where do we go, or what are some of the problems? The big problem is that we don't have sufficient culturally appropriate stoves that in a stockpile that are ready to move to these populations when the need is. And that's because most of the R&D has not been undertaken for these people. They've been undertaken for a stable environment in the developing world mostly, and in the South. The other big issue is that international procurement is one aspect, but it's very important to have locally made stoves. It helps with the livelihoods of the refugees and IDPs who also who've lost all their livelihoods, and it also helps the local economy. So the challenge we have over the next few years is to try to reach these 50 million people by working with you, the private sector, the public sector, innovators, to try to help us to develop the appropriate stoves. And as you rightly said, there is not going to be one stove. There's going to be many different types of stoves, but we need to work with you to develop these and then try to stockpile them and have them ready for the emergencies.
Thank you very much. Now, I think we're heading towards that very exciting part where we all know that going forward from 2015, we need to stop and say, this is viable business. How do we ensure that we scale up? In 1 minute each, I hope you can wrap that up. What excites donors? What excites foundations? What excites the market? What drives the supply? How do we come together and bring the money to the table? How do we make Clean Cookstoves a viable business? Tokunboh.
Well, when we're looking at investments, like I said earlier, we're looking at scalability. And so for us, scalability is entwined with sustainability, which means that we are looking at markets that are being developed. We're looking at it from a market perspective. For us, we do believe finance is important. We do believe skilled entrepreneurs is very important, and we go after those skilled entrepreneurs. And those skilled entrepreneurs are at different levels. You have skilled entrepreneurs at the corporate level. We still believe that the distribution networks that large multinationals can bring to the table is important. So we need people that are having, we talk about taking a social consciousness into corporate businesses so that they can see beyond the profit. They can see that, yes, we're extending our market, but actually we're also transforming lives. So that's important for us. And then also, I still believe that local manufacturing that can create jobs, that can then touch upon other aspects of people's lives, that can then motivate them to want to develop the ecosystem and not just buy, but also sell as producers is important.
Thank you very much. You're both by 30 seconds. Jennifer Pryce.
So partnership, and it takes a village. As we move into this next phase, and I think some of it was reiterated as we all made our opening remarks, how can we all work together and bring the tool that we each, or the role that we each play so well, and amplify that role by partnership? And it comes on the financing side. You spoke of how you get first loss capital in and de-risk projects, and then perhaps make a demonstration that can mainstream, and then you can move that risk capital away. You talked about it on more of the true supply side. How do you get products into households? But this whole next phase of partnership, and it takes a village, is really, I think, where it's at. And that's the exciting piece of all of us being here together today.
Thank you very much. Paul Spiegel.
I think as I mentioned, we need appropriate R&D for the context that we're working in, which is humanitarian emergencies. We need some sort of flexible funding because emergencies are not predictable. from natural disasters to unpredicted emergencies in the conflict areas. And we also need to work with those that are affected, taking into their cultural sensitivities, but ensuring that they can have some sort of livelihoods, and likely that would be some sort of local stove manufacturer, but also taking into account that the tremendous skills that these people have that we often do not sufficiently use.
Carlo, Figà, Talamanca.
From my perspective, I think it's a very unique sector, this of the clean cooking sector, because as it was mentioned more than once this morning, it is a sector that affects the health of people, economic development and livelihood of the people. It protects the environment and climate change. And usually these are things that are taken care by NGOs and international organizations. But now, since the last few years, there's actually the appearance of the private sector doing this. And I think it's very important because it brings something that is sustainably financially and determines a sustainable development of all those countries that are in need of clean cooking solutions.
Allert?
What makes donors happy? I think contribution to them achieving their objectives is deforestation, it's climate change issues, it's reducing inequality and so on and so forth. What makes private investors happy? I mean, I think a decent profit. What makes households wanting to have a efficient stove? And I think, although I firmly believe that it's contributing to improving health conditions, as we have seen this morning, for households to decide to invest in a cook stove is driven by the efficiency and ease of use. If you're not efficient, if you can't prove it, you will lose your market and you will spoil your market and you will be out of business. So I think for us, there is the need to be able to prove that we are contributing basically to the spending pattern of families. They have to reduce the expenses of fuel. And in the urban areas, there will be, I mean, just how many dollars less you have to spend on area. In the rural areas, it's something totally different because there, the money doesn't count. I mean, it's the time and so on and so forth. So I think it's in the efficiency as well as contributing to the cleanliness of the house, because everybody wants to live in a clean house. So if you can show that is what a cook stove produces, then I think there is a bright future.
Thank you very much. And I do not think it is by mistake that I'm sitting here moderating. Every single thing you've all said is the story of my organization, RUES. RUES is the Rural Women Energy Security, and from the inception of RUES last year, we've registered over 2 million Nigerian women. And the reason for the women is about health. That's number one, because no woman wants to die and leave her children to a stepmother. That was my first way of catching women to register. And when I go talk to the men, I tell them, if you're spending $1, you will only spend 10 cents if you allow your wife to buy this. And they say, oh, she should go to the meeting from morning to night, no problem. And then, to get the financiers to come in, we show them, here are the numbers. Social, behavioral changes. In some parts of Nigeria, if you're asking for the hand of a girl in marriage, you must put a clean cook stove as part of the bride asking items. And now there is no political party in Nigeria that can overlook a 2 million women membership. And so women are becoming climate smart, they are becoming energy wise, they claim what is theirs. And the most beautiful part of RUES is the fact that the women are making money. When you ask a woman that is a part of RUES, she tells you she's in a business of saving lives. And this is what it is about. We must all join hands to save lives and, of course, make some money. So we launched a campaign last week. It is called the RUES Woman to Woman initiative. From one woman to another, they will be selling charcoal, they will be selling briquettes, they will be selling LPG, they will be selling stoves, and they will also own properties together. In conflict areas, such as northeast Nigeria, that you know we have issues, in the camps, RUES is going in there, teaching them skills on how women can assemble clean cook stoves themselves. So when they post-conflict, they can go back to their villages, not only as cooperatives to make money, but also give each other emotional support as they go from the conflict era to post-conflict. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions for our panelists, we'd like to entertain them. Yes, please.
What is the smell of the charcoal, if it smells? And also how long it lasts? And it make embers or flame?
Embers or fire?
Flame.
Flame. Okay, I take my charcoal out again. So this one, we have two type of qualities. This one is made 100% out of coconut shell, the hard part of the shell, the coconut, and burns 5 hours. Normal charcoal burns 1 to 1.5 hours. Our second quality charcoal burns 1.5 to 2 hours, and it's made with recycled char residues, which we collect from factories in Cambodia that produce electricity burning wood in gasifiers. In the ashes, there's still some charcoal residues, so we collect them and produce our charcoal. It produces embers and small flames. You can see there's a small hole in the middle. It helps the draft, and so it makes some small flames that come out of the hole. What I like is when people see it for the first time, they look how they burn cleanly and with these small flames. They say like, oh, doiga in Khmer means it's the same as LPG, the same as gas. Because they see all these small flames, it looks like really a gas flame. So, yeah, to answer the question.
Mrs. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Priscilla Chapa from Nigeria, the Rural Women Energy Security. My national coordinator has just talked about RUES. My question is to Tokunboh. You talked about the issues of microfinance and dealing with basically rural women at this point in time. And knowing very well that the financial institutions, the way they are, the rural women are largely illiterate who does not have access or anything. But when they want to assess the collateral, the issues, the finance, the issues of collateral comes in. How do we deal with this issue? And then, I don't know, the chief executive of SNV, you talked so much about the issues of investment. And from all the panels, I've not heard about the issues of investment in sensitization and awareness creation, which is a huge, huge, huge problem. Coming from Nigeria, where we have over 170 people and about a million, and about 49 or 50% of those are in the rural areas. And here we are talking about the issues of clean cook stoves. Majority of these people that are without access to clean cook stoves do not know what we are talking about. And yet, the issues of investment in awareness, sensitization, and creation is not there. So how do we get there? How do we get the buy-in of at least 48.5% of the rural households to key into the subject matter that we're discussing today? Thank you.
Okay, first of all, with the microfinance institutions that we've invested in and we've provided financing, they do not look for collateral. So collateral doesn't come into play. There are other ways that we use social collateral, group lending, a number of other models. And also in terms of sensitization, actually with the pilot that we did, we went into different women's group meetings, certainly in the Lagos and greater area, and we sold this to them. We educated them, and some of the women that had already started to sell these cook stoves were also the spokespeople there as well. So one of the reasons we went with a corporate was so that we could also tap into their large marketing budget, which is what we put on the table as well.
Allert?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the cities are the reasonably easy targets. It is the rural areas which we have to address. My point is that I think if we want to really go to scale, we need also to professionalize it. We need to have professional marketeers in our group. Within the Dutch context, we have teamed up with a 13 organization. We call it the Dutch offer, the Dutch solution. It's private sector. It is investment companies. It is us. It's from the public sector, from the private sector, from the non-governmental sector. We need to get the best people around. I mean, this is serious business. We can't play. I mean, it's not a hobby anymore. It's a serious business, and we have to get serious people in. And I think it's also good to reach out to the private sector to get all the commercial, the marketers in that are able to sell Coca-Cola into the smallest villages in the area, and also to get on board in this particular case.
Thank you very much, Allert. Saying that, actually, being professional, I think, is very, very important. Talking to my colleagues from developing countries, if you say you want to attract that big fund, you also need to justify that the fund is being used for the purpose it is intended. For example, okay, Nigeria this year, we say we're providing 1 million cook stoves for 2014. We initially didn't even know how to go about this. DFID, for example, came in with the support, technical assistant, and said, we'll develop a toolkit for you. On the 17th of November, just before we came, they delivered the toolkit for us. So in 2015, for example, if I say Nigeria, we've been able to disseminate 1 million cook stove, you can actually see on the map and actually point at any location. You'll see the name of the recipient, her address, her telephone number. You will see how many cook stoves she's selling at real time. Yes, please.
My name is Faustina Boache of the Ghana Alliance for Clean Cookstoves. I have two questions. One is to the UNHCR representative here. I want to find out whether the stoves that you give to the displaced people or the refugees are free of charge, and how you acquire your funding for them. And is there any training for them, or are the women involved in the construction of the stoves, or you just bring them from outside and distribute to them? The second one is to the SNV director, and he said there should be demand before supply. SNV is supporting the cookstove sector in Ghana a lot. Indeed, they helped establish the Ghana Alliance for Clean Cookstoves and support us with the Global Alliance for Clean Cookstoves, which is our major supporter. In Ghana, the demand is there. It is hidden. You need to tease it out with just 15 minutes message on clean cooking or the consequences of using our traditional fires. And they go asking, where are the stoves? Where are the stoves? Where are the stoves? We've done that with many different groups in trying to create awareness on the clean cookstoves. Now, the Global Alliance and other partners, we wanted to start a big time awareness creation on cookstoves, but we've halted because they are going to ask us for the stoves, and the stoves are simply not there. So I think that the contest should be where there's supply but there's no demand, then you work on demand. Where there's demand and there's no supply, then you work on supply. So in Ghana, our problem now is scaling up. Scaling up is our problem. We want to scale up to a point where they will keep running to us, and then the stoves will be available, because there's always a sellout, even for areas or for programs that we thought the women were poor. We thought they were poor women. So if you bring out your stoves, they won't be able to buy. And there was a sellout, and they sold out and had to bring some more stoves. So when people get to know the consequences and the benefits of the improved stoves, no matter how expensive, of course it shouldn't be too expensive, but no matter the cost, they will try to buy it. So I think the demand and the supply should be both ways. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess we've run out of time and we're diplomatically being chased off. But ladies and gentlemen, the most important thing for us, the takeaway from here is that donors and investors, those guys with the big pockets, should look at clean cooking, not just as a social intervention, but as a potentially viable business that can lift women out of poverty, not just energy poverty, that can provide the very much needed funds that otherwise you could be sending to developing countries in health interventions. Look at it from the point of climate change. Look at it from women empowerment. Look at it from the point of building green economies. Women should not be dying from cooking. They should be going to the bank as clean cooking businessmen and women. On that note, my name is Bahijjahtu Abubakar. I'd like to sign off here. Thank you.